Buenas tardes, good afternoon. It is currently an hour ahead. I'm in Puerto Rico, and I have the opportunity of sharing some lessons learned from using team tools to design professional development program for the use and integration of technology in the teaching and learning process. We are from Global Education Exchange Opportunities, and we have been commissioned by the Puerto Rico Department of Education to work on the assessment piece on that is going to serve as the foundation for designing that professional development program. So we are not doing the professional development. We're actually doing the assessment piece. So I just wanted to start by sharing. Let me. We are based out of Puerto Rico, so that Puerto Rico is a very small island in the Caribbean, south of Florida, and we're actually out of Manatí, Puerto Rico, and so our work currently is focused around supporting teachers' development of what are the pedagogical practices that support what they do in the classroom using technology for professional learning, but also using technology to learn in general. As a professional development organization, we work in schools that have a very high poverty rate. So we currently work, if you look at our students come from many of them come from very low income environments. Before this project that we started working in, there were already implementations where schools were assigned budgets and they were able to purchase technology, and some schools had technology in the public education system, which is the one that I'm going to be focusing on because our project is mostly with public schools. And so some schools had technology, some teachers had training, other teachers had training, but they were very resistant in their dedication of learning to use technology inside the classroom. A year ago, or I think a year and a half ago, there was the Department of Education had a bid where they call out different vendors, and they wanted to do a system-wide implementation where they would do professional development for the teachers and for the in the K-12 system, and then they would also provide equipment. They would distribute computers to all the students, to all the teachers, to all the school directors, those who did not have at the region and district level as well. The project was delayed, and it was not until April of 2020 that they finished awarding the contract to the different vendors. The first, one of the things that we had been doing a few years, because we do professional development, is that we were researching different entities and different tools. And we were looking at the research data around assessments that would be stronger in helping with what we wanted to have become a theoretical framework for technopedagogical, for creating a culture of technology in education, which we call the culture, of technopedagogical culture. So here we are a small organization. We do research, we do evaluation, and we do professional development. We also have some projects in schools working with students, and this was a wonderful opportunity to pull all of that together, our knowledge of working with teachers, our knowledge of working with data, and our interest in making sure there were equitable access for high quality teaching and learning with technology for students as in getting into this project. So part of our theoretical framework was we started thinking, and this was something we did last year, even before this project was awarded, we started looking at different research around what is the path that you see occurring around in different places for creating that effective use or that significant use of technology. So first, we wanted to make sure that we continue to have high quality learning and constant evaluation of the entire process, because high quality teaching is the ultimate goal. It doesn't matter if we teach with very rudimentary tools or if we teach with high tech. At the end, what we want is a student that has a creative interest and that is and a teacher that does not shy away from innovation to create that very engaged learning environment. However, we knew we had to start, and then in terms of technology, there is all of the digital literacy, and there's now the computational thinking. So there is a wide spectrum that people are, if you look at districts that started with technology integration, whether it is in Puerto Rico or in Florida or in wherever in the States, you have districts that are already very advanced in computational thinking, but we have pockets within that same district that are still wrestling around digital literacy and equitable access. So we wanted to make sure we wanted to create a process that will allow for the different levels where teachers would be and the different levels that the Department of Education wants to reach. Then we went into thinking, well, what we're thinking is when we go into what is digital literacy, then we're talking specifically about technology. How do you use the computer, which is part of what you want to do, and then what is the technology integration that you want to achieve within a classroom that yields a significant use of technology. And so that's usually what we define more as technology integration, not only technology use, but technology use and integration in the classroom. That then we would try to identify and start to describe what do we see and what is happening in creating a technopedagogical culture, because this is not something that happens in the student interaction with this learning, but we needed to think about it in terms of what teachers need to know and be able to do to have that occur in the student. And then what are the conditions that you need to create and go into when you look at the school director and when you keep on looking at the different interactions with all the different players within a school, whether it is the social worker, the guidance counselor at the district level and at the state level, because creating a technopedagogical culture is it's not something isolated that has to do with what text, it's going to, the type of interactions that you have within a school system need to be fostered and need to be created at all levels. And this is something that is going to take, different people are at different levels of availability and different levels of resistance of a change such as this one. And ultimately what we're all looking is what is 21st century teaching and learning? How do you create that ultimate environment using technology? So in that research, that's when we came up with the technology use and the technology integration matrix, which we referred to also in the framework. And we actually went into detail. We were looking at in the proposal that the department put out, they actually wanted us to use at the summer model. And we actually saw, what information, if we were to work with the summer model, what we get, and what would give us more input into what are the characteristics of a classroom and what are the behaviors of students and teachers that you want to be able to acknowledge as part of the significant use of technology. So number one, the winner, the best at that point was the TOPS. So that's when we went and started in March of last 2020. We called USF and we had the great support of James. And I'm sure James consulted with Roy and all of the team in USF. And we're so grateful and so willing to allow us to license the assessment and the survey, and allowed us to translate it into Spanish so that it would be accessible to teachers, because this was this was an implementation that was going to be taking place in a very short turnaround time. So immediately the first part of that process was taking the technology uses and perception survey, because we decided, after looking at all of the tools, that we wanted to start with the survey and then build up to the other tools in order to get the comprehensive picture throughout that 1 year. So we translated and we did a pilot study to make sure that we could validate that language translation. And we had then in addition, we had some adaptation because the Department of Education in Puerto Rico initially the project was for teachers, but then they also, they thought, well, if we're going to be assessing classroom teachers without the other components in the school based on what you're proposing, we will lack information. And also we had, they had committed that we would work with 30,000 participants. That's how high our sample is. So we had to adapt the survey so that we would have a survey for school directors. And then we later we designed additional surveys to go into the social worker and the guidance counselor population. And the TOPS provides the ability for the person to actually design additional surveys. So we took advantage of that feature. So what we did was that we actually, at that point, and that's how it looks like, the Team Tools version, Spanish version. Right now, it's available and it for others who would like to do this kind of administration in places where Spanish is the first language, or and so that's where you would find. And that's what it looks like. So when you go in, another thing that we did, because we were doing this implementation, it was April. We just finished the translation. Puerto Rico had two very difficult situations. One was we had earthquakes at the beginning of the school year, then came the pandemic. So it was very important for us that the entire process was very simple for teachers, so we would guarantee the highest turnout. So the Teacher Center, which is a wonderful place in the TOPS that has many different tools, we made sure we eliminated temporarily the access to all those other tools. So when the teacher came in, it was very simple for them to go into the assessment. So initially, the assessment for teachers and school directors was the only one available. The later assessment, which is the assessment for guidance staff, this was administered later on. So the first administration was in May 26, started in May. We had, and it took we had like 2 weeks, the space open where you can actually go and take the assessment. And then when we did the update of the assessment, created the new survey and did the validation for the social workers and guidance counselors, which was for August, that's when we opened that second survey. Every day, we actually had a different educational region. And every day we actually monitor how many people completed the assessment, because our commitment to the Puerto Rico Department of Education was that we were going to be able to assess 75% of 30,000. That was the goal, the contracted goal in the project. So our participation rate per the region in those two schools was of 94, 93 was, we actually had an average of 93% participation rate. So Puerto Rico is organized, the entire education system is organized into 7 regions. Here you can see the regions that completed are the ones in the dark blue, and those who did not complete by education region are the light orange. So the regions are listed on the bottom, and the region that has the highest participation was the region of Mayagüez, which is from the area that the person that was in the presentation earlier is from. And the region that had the least participation rate is from San Juan. The participation in the assessment, the participation was distributed mostly, if you can see, 23,000 of the participants were teachers, followed by social workers, which was 934 participants, and school principals who were 810. That means that we had this 25,872 participants. That was by August of 2020, we had 27,703 people in the system. That number has since increased. Which institutions the Department of Education had wanted to have as many alternatives to teaching and learning assessed. So when we describe that we have Department of Education, this would be all K-12 system schools, which are approximately 846 schools right now. Puerto Rico currently has also an alternative education program, which is Proyecto Casa. Those are students that were out of school and they come into an alternative education path. 99 educators from that alternative took the assessment. From the technology institutes, which are the it would be the vocational technical program after graduation, 135 educators. Educators that serve students in correctional institutions, 32, and public alliance schools, which are a type of charter school that are in Puerto Rico, also took the assessment. So this was a very inclusive process. The interesting thing, I'm not going to go into detail into the technology integration matrix, but what we did is that we had the support of Dr. Christine and Dr. James, and we actually had weekly meetings. There were some weeks that we actually had more than one meeting a week. So with the support of the Florida Center, we were thinking, how do you manage such a large database? And of course, the TOPS was not created to rank people in any way, shape, or form. The TOPS is more about self-perceived use and integration of technology. However, because we had such a large database, we needed to figure out a way to provide the Puerto Rico, the other vendor working in professional development, how would they place the teachers into the different groups? So specific items from the survey were selected to identify, based on how likely a person is to choose one thing but not the other. That's how we were able to map out what would constitute a teacher in an introductory level versus an infusion transformation level. So the 5 levels in the technology integration matrix were then grouped into 3 distinct categories that would have the highest variability. And that was what we used then to provide the vendor that was going to be doing the professional development routes, basic, competent, and proficient. That's how we would then assign to them who they would actually provide which kind of training to. And so that's what we did, and that's how that's what that representation means. So we administered the assessment to that 93% of the population. And even in May, we already started designing, we had already proposed, if we wanted to provide teachers with an individualized techno-pedagogical plan, what would that look like? And how would we do it based on the results on the technology uses and perception survey? So what we did was that we organized the plan into distinct sections. The first section was a little bit of the theoretical, the description of where where the assessment, about the TOPS and about the technology integration matrix, to familiarize the educator with what it means, more deeper, so that they would get that connection. And then we did what are the results based on their responses, so that they have their data, each person will get their data. And then the interpretation of that data would be in that section. And then what is the level that they placed according to the results, and what are the recommendations based on that level. And the recommendations are made in terms of what professional development is recommended. And then in addition to professional development that is provided by one group, we have a partnership with Digital Promise, and we wanted to allow teachers to also do safe paste of some micro-credentials, because we acknowledged from the beginning that we were going to have different teachers in different levels, and we wanted to make sure they were able to self-guide their learning, augment their learning based on what competence they identify they need to have a significant use of technology. The results in Puerto Rico appeared that most of our educators were in this adaptation level with 68%. And what happened is that individualized plan was available to educators in paper, but is also available on a platform, that digital, so that they can actually get updated information. If they take additional assessments, they can see how they progress in their teaching and learning with technology. So this is the sections that a principal would have. A school director will have their own plan. They would have the profile of their school, so they can see which teachers are in introductory and which are in infusion transformation, so that they can then in the school also be guided to helping creating peer group supports within their school. And this third component is because we have sometimes teacher turnaround, that we wanted to make sure we had updated the teacher in that particular school, so that we're validating data constantly. One of the things in terms of having that paradigm of creating a techno-pedagogical culture was also getting principals to see that there is a diversity within schools and within the entire island of Puerto Rico. So each of those dots is actually a school. If a school has a large enrollment, would be a bigger dot. If it's a small school, would be a smaller dot. However, what I want to highlight in this representation is that this is generated out of all of the data that is available for the over 25,000 teachers that we have, educators that are available here. And what we see is that, for example, the island of Vieques, most of first of all, we have few schools in that island, but then we also have most of the teachers are in the introductory level of teaching and learning with technology, whereas there are other districts that have much darker, and that means that they have more educators that have a higher level of knowledge according to the team level. We're now, we started in January phase 2. So we have all of that. We have those all data in the pre-assessment. And we have that available that we can actually share with others. But in phase 2, we wanted to go deeper into using, working with specific schools where we can actually develop work with them in implementing a coaching process so that we can begin to identify what are those pedagogical practices. We're going to go down. Now we're going into the matrix and into the technology integration matrix, because we want to see what does active learning in an introductory level looks like in a particular school. You know, what does a teacher, and that way teachers begin to have that reflection of what it means to have a significant use of teaching and learning with technology. And so we're now working with 9 teachers in 11 teachers in 11 schools. Each teacher is going to begin working with one additional teacher in a coaching model using, we're doing this along with the digital promise. It's actually a scalable coaching, a challenge-based coaching model that they've used in other projects. And we're also using the coaching curriculum developed by Google. So because we did this so quickly, we didn't put all of the other information just yet, but that's part of what we see now. We're using the team tools going into a deeper level within a particular classrooms. Phase 3 would begin late March, early April, or around that time, where we're going to repeat the assessment, and we're going to have a post-assessment of the teachers. We have a number of teachers who are new into the system. So for them, it would be actually their first pre-assessment. We actually group everyone into introductory that did not take the assessment, the first part. And we have actually marked those who were placed because they did not take the assessment, and those who placed in because of their responses. So the phase 3 of this project is, what are the lessons learned, both from the post-assessment and from the challenge-based coaching model. Do you have any questions? I think I took a little longer.
That's okay. I enjoyed every moment of it.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, James. You know the story. You are the story.
It was exciting reliving the story. This is wonderful. You do such amazing work at GEO, and we're so happy to partner with you on this project. And you know, we're looking forward to what comes next.